Comenzamos el bloque informativo en Extra News.
Threat that illegal migrants have posed not only to my state, which has resulted in nearly 300 arrests in 2025, but also to the nation at large.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, and members of the committee. I appreciate the time to address you all, specifically to Arkansas, Senator. The priorities at the FBI, which I identified during my confirmation hearing and since, is attacking violent crime along with national security. And every single state in this country is a border state. Arkansas is no exception. Allow me to highlight the work of the men and women in the FBI and state and local law enforcement in the state of Arkansas. Since February 5th alone, we've had 220 illegal immigrants arrested on charges varying from violent offenses, weapons offenses, narcotics offenses, and serious violent felonies. 253 separate individuals have been charged related to those offenses. And here's something I want the American people to hear about narcotics and countering narcotics. Thousands of pounds of narcotics were seized in these 3 weeks in the state of Arkansas. Thousands, worth tens of millions of dollars. Everything from fentanyl to meth to cocaine to heroin to marijuana and more. And also including manufactured drugs. The FBI does have the biggest footprint in Arkansas, but we could not achieve this mission without our state and local law enforcement partners, which has been one of the priorities since I took the helm at the FBI. They provide the greatest ground level intelligence to conduct these operations in Arkansas and in every single state across the union. Since February 5th, we've assisted with the arrest of hundreds of criminals and illegals throughout your state, and that was just a 3-week operation. Prior to that, Senator, there was a bust of 17 federal indictments relating to a meth lab in the state of Arkansas in the southwest corner of your state. All of those individuals are now facing prosecution for hundreds of pounds of illegal opioids, guns, and other illicit material. So we will continue to do that work. We will work it 7 days a week, 365 days a year, not just in your state, Mr. Chairman, but in every state.
Thank you, Director Patel. As Director Gabbard highlighted from the annual threat report, Director Ratcliffe, many, if not most, of the chemical precursors for deadly fentanyl produced by Mexican drug cartels originates in China. China, of course, is a techno-totalitarian police state. They have technology to monitor their own people that Soviet Russia could have only imagined. Is there any reason, Director Ratcliffe, to believe that China could not monitor and crack down on this flow of chemical precursors to Mexico if it chose to do so?
Thank you, Senator.
This threat, the field office, along with other federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies, have arrested nearly 300 immigrants in my state in 2025 so far. Could you provide some color about the nature of the threat these illegal immigrants have posed, not just to Arkansas, but our nation, perhaps including some of the details of the horrific offenses they've committed against the American people?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Vice Chairman.
Witness will suspend.
The greatest threat to global security is Israel, and the whole world knows it.
The American people's intelligence community, we will continue to provide the President, Congress, and our warfighters with timely, unbiased, relevant intelligence to keep the United States secure, free, prosperous, and at peace. To the American people specifically, our intelligence community exists to serve you and to ensure your safety, security, and freedom. Thank you.
La administración Trump invoca el privilegio de secretos de Estado en el caso de deportaciones. Bien, el gobierno del presidente Trump invocó el lunes un privilegio del secretario de Estado, o mejor, de secreto de Estado, y se negó a darle a un juez federal información adicional sobre la deportación de extranjeros indocumentados venezolanos a El Salvador bajo una ley de tiempos de pugna del siglo XVIII, un caso que se ha convertido en un punto álgido en medio de una creciente tensión con los tribunales federales. Atención. La declaración llega mientras el juez principal James Bosbar evalúa si el gobierno desafió su orden de hacer retroceder los aviones que transportaban extranjeros indocumentados después de bloquear las deportaciones de personas presuntamente miembros de grupos al margen de la ley sin el debido proceso. ha pedido detalles sobre cuándo aterrizaron los aviones y quiénes estaban a bordo. Información que, según la administración Trump, perjudicaría preocupaciones diplomáticas y de seguridad altamente nacionales. Los abogados del gobierno también pidieron al día de ayer a un tribunal de apelaciones que levantara la orden de BREZNER y permitiera que continuaran las deportaciones, una iniciativa que pareció dividir a los jueces. La jueza del Tribunal del Circuito, Patricia Mille, dijo que los nazis, durante la Segunda Guerra Mundial, recibieron un mejor trato legal que los extranjeros indocumentados venezolanos que fueron deportados a El Salvador este mes bajo el mismo estatuto. Ciertamente cuestionamos la analogía nazi, respondió el abogado del Departamento de Justicia, Drew Ensign, durante una audiencia en el Tribunal de Apelaciones de Estados Unidos para el Circuito del Distrito de Columbia. Millet es uno de los 3 jueces de apelaciones que decidirán si levantar una orden del 15 de marzo que prohíbe temporalmente las deportaciones bajo la ley de no simpatizantes extranjeros de 1798. El lunes no emitieron su fallo desde el estrado. Ciertamente cuestionamos la analogía nazi, respondió el abogado del Departamento de Justicia, Drew Ensign, durante una audiencia en el Tribunal de Apelaciones de Estados Unidos para el Circuito de Columbia. Un segundo juez se mostró receptivo al argumento de la administración de que los migrantes deberían impugnar su detención en Texas y no en la capital del país. El tercer juez del panel no formuló ninguna pregunta. Un segundo juez se mostró receptivo al argumento de la administración de que los extranjeros indocumentados deberían impugnar su detención en Texas y no en la capital del país. El tercer juez del panel no formuló preguntas. La administración ha transferido cientos de extranjeros indocumentados venezolanos a El Salvador, invocando la ley de no simpatizantes extranjeros por primera vez desde la Segunda Pugna Mundial. También el día de ayer, abogados que representan al gobierno venezolano presentaron una acción legal en El Salvador para liberar a 238 venezolanos que se encuentran detenidos en una prisión de máxima seguridad salvadoreña después de que Estados Unidos los deportara. La administración del presidente Donald Trump apeló después de que el juez principal James Bosworth bloqueara esas deportaciones y ordenara que aviones llenos de extranjeros indocumentados venezolanos regresaran a Estados Unidos, y eso no pasó. Ensign argumentó que el fallo de Boxberg era una intrusión enorme y sin precedentes en los poderes del Poder Ejecutivo. El presidente tiene que cumplir la Constitución y las leyes como cualquier otra persona, dijo Millet, quien fue nominado por el presidente demócrata Barack Obama en 2013. Si analizamos la cuestión, todos estos jueces son altamente partidistas y nombrados por presidentes de el bando demócrata. El juez Justin Walker, nominado por Trump en 2020, pareció ser más receptivo a los argumentos de la administración debido a su línea de preguntas. Walker mencionó los argumentos del gobierno de que los demandantes deberían haber presentado su demanda en Texas, donde los extranjeros indocumentados fueron totalmente detenidos. ¿Podrías haber presentado exactamente la misma denuncia que presentaste aquí en el Tribunal de Distrito de Texas?, dijo Walker al abogado de la Unión Estadounidense por las Libertades Civiles, Lee Garland. Durante una audiencia el viernes, Bosberg se comprometió a determinar si el gobierno destacó su orden verbal desde el estrado para que los aviones regresaran al punto de partida, es decir, a Estados Unidos. El Departamento de Justicia ha declarado que las instrucciones verbales del juez no eran válidas, que solo...
Thank you, Senator, for the question. No, there's nothing that prevent China, the People's Republic of China, from cracking down on fentanyl precursors. As you well know, Senator, one of the reasons that they don't is that there are more than 600 PRC-related companies that produce those precursor chemicals in an industry that generates $1.5 trillion. That is one of the reasons that we see the Chinese efforts to affect the fentanyl precursors are really limited in nature and intermittent in nature, and not a dedicated effort to enforce their own laws and regulations to crack down on this.
Thank you, Director Ratcliffe. I have many more questions I could ask, but I'm going to try to lead by example and stay within the 5-minute limit for the benefit of senators. I remind everyone there is a vote scheduled at noon. I hope to finish the open portion of this hearing before that vote closes, after which time we'll move to the closed portion. The Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be happy to take your extra 13 seconds, but I want to go back to what I addressed at the outset. I mean, this was not only sloppy, it not only violated all procedures, but if this information had gotten out, American lives could have been lost. The Houthis had this information, could reposition their defensive systems. So I want to get a little more information about this. Director Gabbard, did you participate in the group chat with Secretary of Defense and other Trump senior officials discussing the Yemen war plans?
Senator, I don't want to get into the specifics.
Ma'am, were you on? You're not going to be willing to address. So you're not. Are you denying? Matt, will you answer my question, ma'am? You were not TG on this group chat.
I'm not going to get into the specifics.
So you refuse to acknowledge whether you were on this group chat?
Senator, I'm not going to get into the specifics.
Why are you going to get into the specifics? Is it because it's all classified?
Because this is currently under review by the National Security Council.
Because it's all classified? If it's not classified, share the text now.
As the White House previously stated,
is it classified or non-classified information on this text?
I can confirm.
Director Ratcliffe, were you on the group chat?
Senator, I was on a signal messaging group.
So you were the John Ratcliffe on that chat?
I was.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can I provide some context, Senator, to that?
Yes, but I've got a series of questions.
Well, but I think it's important because at the outset you made a couple of comments about signal messaging using encrypted apps. So that we're clear, one of the first things that happened when I was confirmed as CIA director was signal was loaded onto my computer at the CIA, as it is for most CIA officers. One of the things that I was briefed on very early, Senator, was by the CIA records management folks about the use of signal as a permissible work use. It is. That is a practice that preceded the current administration to the Biden administration.
Director Ratcliffe, I've got a series of questions. If you're making the statement, making the statement, the signal is a secure channel.
No, can I answer that? It is.
I've got a series of
decryption. So to finish,
I understand encryption.
It is permissible to use to communicate and coordinate for work purposes, provided, Senator, that any decisions that are made are also recorded through formal channels. Right. So those were procedures that were implemented. My staff implemented those processes, followed those processes, complied with those processes, and finally, just please. So my communications, to be clear, in a signal message group were entirely permissible and lawful and did not include classified information.
Well, we will make that determination, because if it's not classified, share the text with the committee. Let me go on. Director Gabbard, you are the security executive and set access guidelines for classified information. Did you contact the defense secretary or others after this specific military planning was put out and say, hey, we should be doing this in a SCIF?
There was no classified material that was shared in that.
So then if there was no classified material, share it with the committee. You can't have it both ways. These are important jobs. This is our national security. Bobbing and weaving and trying to, filibuster your answer. So please answer the question. If this was Director Gabbard, if this was a rank and file intelligence officer who did this kind of careless behavior, what would you do with them?
Senator, I'll reiterate that there was no classified material that was shared in that.
And if there's no classified materials, share. And then if there's no classified materials, then you can't even answer the question, whether you're on the chat. This is strangely familiar, and I think my colleagues will remember, when you couldn't answer the question, is Edward Snowden a traitor? Man, I have serious doubts about your, anyway. Director Gabbard, I'm going to give you this. Tweeted just 11 days ago, and I'm quoting you. Any unauthorized release of classified information is a violation of the law and will be treated as such. So if this information is classified, what are you going to do?
Senator, 2 points here. First of all, there's a difference between inadvertent release versus
careless and sloppy,
malicious leaks of classified information. The second point is there was no classified information that was on
the information
Signal
committee
group
should
chat.
get that information. Director
And the
Patel,
National Security
Director
Council
Patel,
has
my time's
reviewed
about out,
how
and I'm
this
going to use
occurred.
my 12 seconds up the chairman game. Director Patel, has the FBI launched any investigation of this?
Senator, I was just briefed about it late last night, this morning. I don't have an update.
I would like to get an answer by the end of the day.
At this point in the ordinary course of affairs, I would recognize Senator Collins. She asked me to express to you that she is under the weather this morning. She regrets her absence, but anticipates submitting written questions to which I would request your prompt replies for the senator. Senator Cornyn.
Director Gabbard, I applaud President Trump's efforts to try to bring an end to the war between Russia and Ukraine. I want to read a statement out of the annual threat assessment and just confirm that you agree with this. It says Russia views its ongoing war with Ukraine as a proxy conflict with the West, and its objective to restore Russian strength and security in its near abroad against perceived U.S. and Western encroachment has increased the risks of unintended escalation between Russia and NATO. Do you agree with that statement? And that is in the annual threat assessment, correct?
Correct.
I'd like to refer to an AP story, Associated Press, dated March 21st, 2025. The title of the article is Western Officials Say Russia is Behind a Campaign of Sabotage Across Europe. This AP map shows it. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask unanimous consent that this be made part of the record.
Without objection.
The document that AP compiled, and I presume this is through open sources, documented 59 incidents, including cyber attacks, spreading propaganda, plotting killings, or committing acts of vandalism, arson, sabotage, or espionage. Is that consistent with your understanding and impression of what Russia's currently engaged in Europe?
Senator, I haven't seen that specific article, but I can confirm that we assess Russia's attempts to conduct such sabotage activities in Europe.
Thank you. One of the things that I'm most concerned about following some of the discussions between Russia and Ukraine and the United States and our other allies, obviously, as I said, peace between Ukraine and Russia is the desirable end state. I think you'd have to be crazy to say otherwise. But I also want to talk a little bit about the unexpected or maybe unintended consequences of European insecurity. I know the incoming Chancellor of Germany has talked about the possibility that Germany might share its nuclear weapons with Ukraine and suggested that the UK would be part of that. I know that Poland has talked about acquiring nuclear weapons, and perhaps other European countries to make up for what they view as a receding of the American umbrella of protection. General Krause, what would be the result of the proliferation of nuclear weapon-armed countries in Europe if, in fact, that would occur as a result of the perception of European insecurity?
Senator, thank you for the question. One of the things that the intelligence community works very hard on is to understand who has nuclear weapons throughout the planet. And as discussed in the opening statements, both by the chair and by Director Gabbard, the proliferation and the increase in the types and the lethality of nuclear weapons is one of the things that we have to track and we as a nation are going to have to face. It has changed dramatically in the last 5 years and will continue to change over the next 5 years. The addition of additional countries which have their own deterrence policies and will act in a nuclear dialogue, or the presence of those weapons, the security of those weapons, the movement and the threat of use of those weapons complicates the environment by which all of us will operate and will complicate all of the decisions by which all future conflict and the political decisions that we support of the decision makers.
It makes the world a more dangerous place, does it not?
Senator, yes, it does.
And just by way of history, Ukraine used to have the third largest arsenal of nuclear weapons on the planet. But as a result of negotiations between Russia and Ukraine and the United Kingdom, the Budapest Memorandum documented a commitment by Russia and the United States to protect the territorial integrity of Ukraine in exchange for them giving up their nuclear weapons. Did I correctly summarize the content of the Budapest Memorandum back in 1994?
Yes, Senator, you did, and Ukraine willingly gave up its weapons for the protection of others.
Thank you very much.
Senator Wyden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And obviously, my colleagues and I feel very strongly about the war planning meeting over unclassified phones. Obviously reckless, obviously dangerous. Both the mishandling of classified information and the deliberate destruction of federal records are potential crimes that ought to be investigated immediately. And I want to make clear that I'm of the view that there ought to be resignation, starting with the National Security Advisor and the Secretary of Defense. Director Ratcliffe and Director Gabbard, have you participated in any other group chats with senior Trump administration officials in which classified information was shared using phones that weren't cleared for such information? Question for the two of you.
Senator, thank you for the question. I haven't, your question was, have I participated in any other group chats sharing classified information? To be clear, I haven't participated in any signal group messaging that relates to any classified information at all.
Okay. Director Gabbard?
Senator, I have the same answer. I have not participated in any signal group chat or any other chat on another app that contained any classified information.
Yeah, and I just think it's important to follow through here. Would the two of you cooperate with an audit to confirm that that is that is the case?
I have no objection.
Senator, I'll certainly comply with any follow-up that the National Security Council would deem appropriate. But again, to be clear, the use of signal message end-to-end encryption applications is permissible and was, in this case, used permissibly, at least to my understanding, and in a lawful manner.
The seriousness of this is so clear. That's why I want to have an audit, and both of you gave me an answer indicating that you would be open to that, and I appreciate it. Director Patel, you weren't in this particular group chat, but have you participated in any chats on unclassified phones with other administration officials relating to national security? And if so, on what other topics?
Thank you for your question, Senator, and not that I can recall.
Okay. Question I have for you, Director Gabbard, involves this question of Elon Musk wasn't going to see the military's China war plans because he said he, quote, has business in China and he would be susceptible perhaps to that. That was his comment. So as DNI, you're responsible for security clearance policies across the government. Under your watch, how are you going to go about carrying out this obligation? Because I think it obviously is a very significant one in terms of American national security.
Thank you, Senator. As you know, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence provides oversight over these different 18 intelligence elements. Leaders within those elements are empowered with that responsibility to uphold the trust that the American people have placed in them. In this example that you cited, both Secretary Hegseth as well as President Trump completely denied the assertion that Elon Musk was going to receive any kind of classified war plan brief pertaining to China or any other country.
So on the question of whether the president has the prerogative to get clearances is really the area that I want to touch on, because you're formally responsible for security clearance policies, and that's why I'm asking about it. So can a president decide who gets the clearance?
Yes.
So what about your role? You're formally responsible for security clearance policies.
That is also true.
So how do we resolve it? President just gets his way.
The elected president and commander-in-chief has the authority to provide a security clearance to those who he deems necessary.
Mr. Chairman, and to the ranking member, I think we have to have a further discussion on this and figure out what the ground rules, are. I think it's clear what the director says. I just think we need more clarity, because I think you have the formal responsibility for security clearances, and now we've heard that this somehow is going to be the president's project, and I think we ought to have further discussions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Langford.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Thank you to all of you, your service to the country. It matters. There are a lot of citizens of our country right now that have much greater security in their life because of the work that you do and the people that are working around you do. So I just want to say I appreciate that. For the folks in Oklahoma, they would definitely want me to be able to say thank you for your service. Let me ask a couple of questions on this. Director Gabbard, let me start with you on this. Iran has been listed as one of the top sponsors of terrorism for a very long time. They are the primary armors of Hezbollah, of Hamas, of the Houthis. They're arming the Russians to be able to kill Ukrainians. They continue to be able to destabilize the region. And just in the recent days, when many nations in the Gulf region have talked about how to provide greater stability, Iranian leadership stepped out and made very clear statements. They want a one-state solution for Israel, and it's to drive out all Jews. So this continues to be an issue not just for the region, but for Americans in particular. So my question is on this is the sanctions and the effect of sanctions, what we know about the Iranian response. Under the Biden administration, those sanctions will turn down, where, quite frankly, Iran has been able to sell $90 billion in oil on the global market to be able to rearm itself and all the others around the region. Now sanctions are now going back on to Iran again. What do we know about the effect of those sanctions?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. These sanctions have just begun to be reinstated, so the full effects have not yet borne fruit. But the message that the president has sent with his maximum pressure campaign is certainly heard. As the chairman mentioned in his opening remarks, President Trump recently sent a letter to the leader of Iran expressing his interest in direct talks in order to try to de-escalate and to prevent war, prevent Iran from gaining a nuclear weapon.
You just walked into this position and trying to get your feet on the ground in so many different issues that are outstanding on that. I raised to you the issue of individuals that are currently illegally present in the country going through a process but are listed as special interest aliens. By definition from the administration, those are individuals that we don't know their level of risk, but they're considered a national security risk, but we don't know anything else about them from there. So how are you trying to get on top of the number of people that are criminal aliens in the country, but also these special interest aliens that come from terrorist areas?
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate your question. As far as the FBI is concerned, you hit on it. Criminal. So we are focused across our interagency partners at DHS, ICE, CBP, CIS, and elsewhere to identify through our information sharing networks that we have stood up with state and local law enforcement to provide us the details on any criminal evidence relating to any of the individuals you highlighted. And if there's a nexus there, a case will be opened, by the line agents who predicated lawful and factual basis to do so. And we will further refer that matter to the Department of Justice for prosecution. We are reviewing all of these cases anew, and we will report back to you, Senator, with some fidelity on the outcome of that process.
Okay, thank you. Are you getting good feedback from social media technology companies and cooperation from them on illegal activities that are promoted on their site. All the different sites have rules and standards for what can and can't be done on that. But for instance, in the border areas, many of the sites are allowing child trafficking, or they're allowing basically the hiring of Americans to come be drivers and such, and they know this is being circumvented. Are they working with you on that to be able to take illegal content off their sites?
Thank you, Senator. And we have engaged directly at the top levels of all the private sector software communities and social media companies, and they have been very helpful because they have been told that this is a priority for me at the FBI to work with them because they have so much information to share back with us. Now, that's, of course, just on the public systems. We're not talking about the dark net.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Heinrich.
Thank you, Chairman. Director Ratcliffe, I want to start with you. Who determined that the content of this discussion on Signal was not classified?
Senator, I guess I'm not.
Well, for example,
I can speak to my personal knowledge. There was no classified
agent mentioned as part of this story. Normally, that would be classified information. So I guess what I'm asking is, did you just determine it was not classified, or was there any declassification after the fact?
So to be clear, so everyone understands the process, as we talked about, Signal is a permissible use.
I understand
has been used
that.
at the CIA, has been approved by the White House for senior officials.
And appropriate for many conversations.
And recommended by CISA for high-level officials who would be targeted by foreign adversaries to use end-to-end encrypted apps whenever possible, like Signal. In this case, what the National Security Advisor did was to request through a Signal message that there be coordination. So you mentioned the name of a CIA active officer, correct? So
I didn't mention the name.
You didn't mention the name.
Existence of that.
And in the article, the implication was that somehow that was improper. That was not the case. So a CIA officer was not operating undercover. So the request for coordination was for a staff member to coordinate on the high side. So I communicated the name of a CIA officer not operating undercover, completely appropriate, who does openly and routinely coordinate with the White House as a member of my staff. So the intimation there that there was something inappropriate was clearly incorrect.
Did it occur to you that given the sensitive nature of this discussion, that it could just move to the high side?
So that was clearly, Senator, I think the intent was that this was initially set up by the National Security Advisor with the instruction that send a point of contact, and then you will be provided with information further on the high side for high side communication. So I think clearly it reflects that the National Security Advisor intended this to be, as it should have been, a mechanism for coordinating between senior level officials, but not a substitute for using high side or classified communications for anything that would be classified. And I think that is exactly what did happen.
So I'm curious, did this conversation at some point include information on weapons packages, targets, or timing?
Not that I'm aware of.
Director Gabbard, same question.
Same answer, and defer to the Department of Defense on that question.
Well, those are two different answers, but you're saying that was not part of the conversation.
That's my knowledge.
The precise operational issues were not part of this conversation.
Correct.
Okay. I want to ask you, Director Gabbard, something on a very different track here, which is I very much agree with the conclusion of the ATA that foreign illicit drug actors are a major threat in the United States, and many of you have spoken to this today. Is the IC wrong in its omission of Canada as a source of illicit fentanyl in the ATA? I was surprised, given some of the rhetoric, that there is no mention of Canada in the ATA.
Senator, the focus in my opening and the ATA was really to focus on the most extreme threats in that area. And our assessment is that the most extreme threat related to fentanyl continues to come from and through Mexico.
So the president has stated that the fentanyl coming through Canada is massive, and actually said it was an unusual and extraordinary threat. And that was the language that was used to justify putting tariffs on Canada. I'm just trying to reconcile those two issues. Is it an unusual and extraordinary threat, or is it a minor threat that doesn't even merit mention in the annual threat assessment?
Senator, I don't have the numbers related to Canada in front of me at this time. I'd like to get back to you on the specifics of that answer.
It's less than 1% of the fentanyl that we are able to interdict. But if you have different information, I would very much welcome that.
Senator Budd.
Thank you all for being here. And Director Gabbard, prior to your role here, we had a big storm in western North Carolina, and you were among those first from outside our state to show up. So thank you for your work there. Thank you for your ongoing work there and that of your family as well. It was good to see them when out in western North Carolina last week, so thank you. Director Hawk, so what do we need to do in regards to Volt Typhoon? There's a lot of pre-positioning that went on there. So where are we with that? And what do we need to do in regards to our power companies, whether it's generation or distribution, Duke Energy in my home state, or even the rural electric co-ops? What do we need? What have we learned? And what can I tell them?
Senator, 99% of the critical infrastructure in the United States is controlled by private companies. So that really drives us to talk about how do we partner with industry and with the commercial sector, in this case, with power sector. Volt Typhoon began when industry came to the intelligence community and said, we're seeing anomalous activity, can you help us gain context? And we were able to bring context to that to be able to understand what the threat was and then to ultimately be able to identify who was behind that threat. Since that time, we've continued to work very closely with industry to be able to determine what are the right ways for us to be able to pursue these threats within networks to enable the interagency, to enable our partners and industry to be able to pursue them. That's the approach we have to take. It is a collaboration between the government and industry to be able to eradicate these threats, and we have continued to pursue them together since our first identification and notification that we did related to this particular threat.
Thank you. What have you done on the offensive side here in regards to, I think there were three, Salt Typhoon, Volt Typhoon, and even Flax Typhoon. Maybe there were others, but those are the three that are known.
Senator, I've been given really clear guidance in terms of what the Secretary of Defense expects in terms of our aggressive approach to be able to restore deterrence, and I look forward to talking with you about that in the closed hearing.
Look forward to that. Directors Gabbard and Ratcliffe and Patel, thank you all again for being here. So as you're all keenly aware, Section 702 of FISA is an extremely useful authority to help keep our nation safe. I also know that we need to rebuild American people's trust and confidence that such authorities are not being misused by the intelligence community to unlawfully target Americans. So since taking over your respective agencies, can you tell me and tell the American people how effective the recent changes have been in protecting privacy and civil liberties of each and every Americans? And then, if you will, comment on how useful the authority is in generating intelligence that actually protects the homeland. We'll start with you, Director Gabbard.
Senator, Section 702, which authorizes the foreign collection of non-U.S. persons outside of the United States, continues to be one of our most effective collection tools to ensure our national security. There are a number of reforms that the Senate passed, that Congress passed last year that have proven to strengthen the protections of Americans' Fourth Amendment rights. In the short time that I've been in this seat, I've seen a few examples of that directly, most recently through the FISA court, calling in an amici to come in and weigh in on a dispute regarding provisions that would further protect Americans' Fourth Amendment rights. I'll be visiting our friends at the NSA next week and doing a quote-unquote ride-along to observe directly how those reforms that Congress passed are being implemented to protect Americans' civil liberties, and look forward to reporting back after I've had that opportunity.
Thank you. Director Patel.
Thank you, Senator. With my background in FISA and 702, I just want to clearly delineate between FISA Title 1.3 and 702 collection. We need to both ardently defend its use, but also ardently support reforms that allow the American public to entrust that those charged with those capabilities are not violating the Fourth Amendment or any other violation. Speaking to Title I, Title III, when it comes to U.S. persons, I have already included an amendment in terms of FBI language to make sure that when a U.S. person is targeted, that the FBI specifically is responsible for culling through all exculpatory information that is reasonably known and satisfying that burden and stating it in the application. When it comes to 702, Senator, some of the biggest enterprise efforts we have had to thwart national security risk would not have occurred if 702 collection had gone dark. And the FBI continues to use that information to protect the homeland. We've had multiple takedowns in the last 6 months based on 702 and interagency collection processes, but we just need to ensure the American public, and I'm working with my team, that even in the 702 sphere, American citizens' information is protected.
Thank you all. I look forward to the discussion in the closed session.
Senator King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Gabbard, I didn't intend to get into the Jeffrey Goldberg story, but something you said has sort of puzzled me. According to open source reporting at 11:44 on the morning of March 15th, Secretary Hegseth put into this group text a detailed operation plan, including targets, the weapons we were going to be using, attack sequences, and timing. And yet you've testified that nothing in that chain was classified. Wouldn't that be classified? What if that had been made public that morning before the attack took place?
Senator, I can attest to the fact that there were no classified or intelligence equities that were included in that chat group at any time.
So,
and I
so the
defer,
attack sequencing and timing and weapons and targets you don't consider to should have been classified?
I defer to the Secretary of Defense, the National Security Council on that question.
Well, you're the head of you're the head of the intelligence community, and you're supposed to know about classifications. So your testimony very clearly today is that nothing was in that set of texts that were classified. I'll follow up on Senator Wyden's question. If that's the case, please release that whole text stream so that the public can have a view of what actually transpired on this discussion. It's hard for me to believe that targets and timing and weapons would not have been classified. Well, let me move on. You approved this report, this annual report, prepared by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. Is this submitted to the White House routinely in anticipation of its public release?
I don't know what you mean by submitted routinely.
Was this report submitted to the White House before its release today?
It was submitted to them once it was completed. I think probably around the same time it was sent to all of you.
I want to move on. One note that surprised me, I've been on this committee now this is my 13th year. Every single one of these reports that we have had has mentioned global climate change as a significant national security threat, except this one. Has something happened? Has global climate change been solved? Why is that not in this report? And who made the decision that it should not be in the report when it's been in every one of the 11 prior reports?
I can't speak to the decisions made previously, but this annual threat assessment has been focused very directly on the threats that we deem most critical to the United States and our national security. Obviously, we're aware of occurrences within the environment and how they may impact operations, but we're focused on the direct threats to Americans' safety, well-being, and security.
How about how they will impact mass migration, famine, dislocation, political violence, which is the finding, by the way, of the 2019 annual threat assessment under the first Trump administration? You don't consider that a significant national security threat?
For the intelligence community, being aware of the environment that we're operating in is a given. What I focused this annual threat assessment on, and the IC focused this threat assessment on, are the most extreme and critical direct threats to our national security.
Let me ask a direct question. Who decided climate change should be left out of this report after it's been in the prior 11? Where was that decision
I
made?
gave direction to our team at ODNI to focus on the most extreme and critical national security threats
Your
that we
direction
face.
include no comments on climate change?
Senator, as I said, I focused on the most extreme and direct national security threats.
That's not a response to my question.
That we face.
Did you instruct that there be no finding in terms of climate change in this report?
I don't recall giving that instruction.
Final questions in a few short seconds that I have left. You all concede, and it's in the report repeatedly, about the cyber danger from China, from Russia, from Iran. Why then is the administration deconstructing CISA? 130 people fired. The General Hawk talked about the importance of public-private cooperation. That section of CISA seems to have been disestablished. What possible policy reason is there for undermining CISA's relationship to the states with regard to elections and to the private sector with regard to cybersecurity when the cybersecurity threat is only growing? Anybody want to tackle that?
I won't speak for all of my colleagues here, but I don't believe any of us have any insight into those specific staffing decisions that have been made.
Well, let me ask you this question. You've all found, the report has found explicitly growing cyber threats, including to elections, from Russia, China, Iran. Do you believe that it's in the national interest to diminish our capacity to deal with those cyber issues? Yes or no?
President Trump is focused on effects and making sure that the people that we have and the resources that we have are focused on our national security. He and his team recognize that more people doesn't necessarily always mean better effects. Those are some of the things that are driving the changes that we're seeing across the administration, is getting all of our agencies back and focused on their core mission.
General Hawk, do you agree that...
Senator King, your time has expired.
Thank you.
Senator Rounds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, thank you to all of you for your service to our country. With regard to the issue surrounding Signal, I'm going to address it, but I'm going to address it in the closed session so that we can get more in depth into that issue. In the meantime, I want to direct my first question to Director Ratcliffe. As the debate continues in Washington regarding spectrum, what can you share in this unclassified setting regarding the critical nature of spectrum to national security interests generally?
Atención porque está sucediendo ahora. El presidente Donald Trump defiende a Walls de la NSA. Aprendió una lección. El presidente Donald Trump apoya a Mike Walls luego del error del asesor de seguridad nacional de agregar a un editor de una revista a un chat grupal sobre planes de acción militar y le dijo al medio NBC que Walls aprendió la lección. Trump hizo estos comentarios en una entrevista telefónica el día de hoy, horas después de que el diario político exactamente, informara que Walls podría ser obligado a retirarse de la NSA. La seguridad a cargo de él en la Casa Blanca. Michael Walls aprendió una lección y es un buen hombre, dijo Trump al medio NBC. Los comentarios de Trump se produjeron casi al mismo tiempo que la secretaria de prensa de la Casa Blanca, Caroline Leavitt, dijo en una publicación en X que el presidente sigue teniendo confianza en su equipo de seguridad nacional, incluido Mike Walls. Las historias que afirman lo contrario provienen de fuentes anónimas que claramente no hablan con el presidente. y están escritas por prioridades o periodistas ávidos de primicias, añadió Leavitt, aparentemente haciendo referencia al artículo del diario político el día de ayer por la noche. En un artículo publicado el día de ayer, un editor en jefe de Atlantic escribió que el 11 de marzo escribió una petición de conexión en la aplicación Signal de Walls, que aceptó pensando que Walls quería charlar sobre el país ucraniano o Irán o algún otro asunto importante. Esto está en investigación en el momento. Según Goldberg, el vicepresidente J.D. Vance, el secretario de Defensa Pete Hegseth y Walls usaron el chat grupal para hablar sobre posibles acciones militares en Yemen contra los hutíes. El grupo negativo y irresponsable, por supuesto, o es el causante de los hechos negativos a las rutas marítimas de la región, de los cuales estaban hablando ayer. Goldberg señaló que una publicación de Hegseth contenía detalles operativos de los próximos eventos en Yemen, incluyendo información sobre objetivos, herramientas que Estados Unidos desplegaría y la secuencia de estos eventos negativos. Leavitt dijo, no se discutieron planes de pugna y 2, no se envió ningún material clasificado al hilo. Trump dijo al medio NBC que fue un problema y único problema en 2 meses. Y resultó no ser tan grave, explicando cómo Goldberg fue añadido accidentalmente al hilo de mensajes. El presidente Trump revoca el equipo del Servicio Secreto de Mallorcas. El presidente Donald Trump revocó la protección del Servicio Secreto del exsecretario de Seguridad Nacional, Alejandro Mayorkas, quien fue acusado por la Cámara de Representantes por su fracaso en asegurar la frontera sur en el gobierno de Joe Biden. Bien, Mayorkas, quien nunca fue al juicio político debido a que el Senado, controlado por los demócratas, desestimó los cargos de la Cámara de Representantes, no tenía derecho a la protección del servicio secreto una vez que terminó su mandato en el mes de enero. Sin embargo, el expresidente Joe le extendió la protección 6 meses, según informó el Washington Post. La protección del servicio secreto para los hijos de Joe, Hunter y Ashley, también finalizó el lunes, según informó el Post. Es decir, están sin protección del servicio secreto. Una semana después de que Trump anunciara su revocación, sucedió esto. Adiós protección del servicio secreto para Hunter y Ashley. Por ley, los hijos de expresidentes deben contar con la protección del servicio secreto hasta los 16 años. Pero los presidentes tienen la opción, mediante decreto ejecutivo, de otorgar protección a ciertas personas. A alguien, o al igual que en el caso de Mayorkas, Joe extendió la protección de sus hijos por 6 meses. El exsecretario de Seguridad Nacional, Alejandro Mayorkas, y Hunter, la señora Ashley Biden y sus familias ya no son protegidos del Servicio Secreto de Estados Unidos, dijo el portavoz del Servicio Secreto Anthony Yugelmi al Post en un correo electrónico. En febrero de 2024, Mayorkas se convirtió en el primer secretario del gabinete desde 1876 en ser sometido a un juicio político tras la aprobación de 2 artículos por parte de la Cámara de Representantes por 214 votos a favor y 213 votos en contra. Sin embargo, el senador Chuck Schumer, demócrata por New York, y entonces líder de la mayoría, pidió la desestimación de los cargos, argumentando que los miembros del gabinete no pueden ser sometidos a un juicio político, ni menos destituidos, simplemente por aplicar las políticas de la administración a la que sirven. El Senado, por un estrecho margen, votó a favor de desestimar cada cargo. En enero, Trump revocó la protección del servicio secreto a John Bolton, ex asesor de Seguridad Nacional de su primer gobierno. Joe le otorgó dicha protección después de que Irán amenazara su vida, probablemente en represalia por el hecho negativo del general Qasem Soleimani, líder de la fuerza Quds del cuerpo de la Guardia Revolucionaria Islámica de Irán, en un evento negativo ordenado por Trump en un aeropuerto iraquí en enero del 2020. Arzobispo ortodoxo estadounidense elogia a Trump y lo compara con Constantino Grande. Veamos de qué se trata. El arzobispo Elpidoporus de la Arquidiócesis Ortodoxa Griega de América dijo cosas agradables sobre el presidente Trump y dijo que era como un Constantino el Grande. Veamos. Mientras estaba junto a Trump, Elpidoporos elogió al presidente y dijo que era uno de los líderes más admirados de la ortodoxia. Con su liderazgo ustedes encarnan los valores de nuestra fe cristiana y el amor por el Evangelio. Me recuerdan al gran emperador romano Constantino el Grande, quien fundó y construyó la magnífica ciudad de Constantinopla, mi ciudad natal, hoy conocida como Estambul, dijo, provocando vítores al mencionar. Atención, porque Daniel Quintero, exalcalde de Medellín, Colombia, afirmó que desde este 25 de marzo comienza su campaña a la presidencia. Bien, Quintero, mediante un video, anunció su intención de medirse en las elecciones del 2026 para llegar a la Casa de Nariño. Recuerden que Quintero obviamente es altamente un gran seguidor de Gustavo Petro, el actual presidente de Estados Unidos. Es de izquierda, por supuesto. Hoy empieza nuestra campaña a la presidencia. Sobre las rocas que lanzaron para sacarnos, construiremos la plataforma desde donde nos lanzaremos por Colombia, señaló en el mensaje publicado en sus redes sociales el día de hoy. Quintero concluyó: empezamos a construir una nueva historia, vamos a resetear la política en Colombia. Es lo que menciona, se lo presentamos a ustedes en exclusiva en este.
Hoy empieza nuestra campaña a la presidencia sobre las rocas que lanzaron para sacarnos del camino. Vamos a construir la plataforma desde la que conquistaremos a Colombia. A pesar de que la audiencia de imputación era virtual, iré presencialmente. Quiero que me acompañen hoy a la Alpujarra a las 12 del día. Hoy empezamos a construir una nueva historia. Vamos a resetear la política en Colombia.
Muy pronto, vuelve a escuchar las noticias más relevantes en este canal de noticias.